Perfect F&I Close in 2026. There are over a dozen closing techniques taught in F&I. The assumptive close, the Ben Franklin close, the Columbo close. Most managers try to memorize all of them and pull out the right one at the right moment. That approach is why most managers close inconsistently. The top operators in this industry, they don't use 12 closes, they use one. And that one framework outperforms everything else combined because it removes pressure, creates clarity, and lets the customer feel like they got to make their own decision. I'm Jeremy Williams, the president of Assure Group. Today, I'm giving you that exact closing framework that we coach across the country. This is what Tier 1 operators run on every single deal, every customer, every time. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why you never need another close again. Why multiple closes create the problem they're trying to solve. Let me explain why the traditional approach to closing is fundamentally broken. When you memorize 12 techniques, you create a decision for yourself before you've even created one for the customer. You're sitting there mid-deal, trying to figure out which close fits this situation. Should I go with the assumptive close? Should I try the urgency close? Should I try the takeaway? That internal debate pulls your attention away from the person that's sitting right in front of you. And your customer feels it. They feel you calculating. They feel the shift, and that shift will fracture the trust. And the other problem is consistency. When you run different closes on different deals, you can never isolate what's actually working. A good month could mean you happen to pick the right techniques. A bad month can mean you pick the wrong ones. You're gambling with the process instead of operating from one. At Assura, we teach the exact opposite. One framework mastered completely, adapted to every scenario. Run with zero deviation. That's not limiting, that's liberating. Because when you're not thinking about which close to use, all of your focus goes where it belongs, on the customer. The framework is called comparison close. Some people know it as a this or that. The principle is simple. You never ask the customer if they want protection. You present two responsible options and let them decide which one best fits their situation. Here's why it works at a fundamental level. When you ask yes or no questions, you hand the customer an exit. Do you want the service agreement? Exit. Are you interested in a gap? No. Would you like to add a tire and wheel? Probably not. Every one of those questions makes a no the easiest answer. And under the decision pressure, most people will take the path of least resistance. The comparison close eliminates the exit. Instead of if, you ask which. Instead of do you want this, you ask which version of this fits you better. The customer is no longer deciding on whether to protect themselves, they're deciding on how. That's a completely different psychological position. One creates resistance and the other creates ownership of the decision. And here's what makes the framework elite. It works the same way on every protection, every deal structure, and every customer personality. You don't need 12 closes for 12 situations. You need one framework that adapts to all of them. Let me walk you through exactly how this sounds on real protection so you can hear the adaptability. Vehicle service agreement term comparison. Which makes more sense for how you plan to own the vehicle? Opting out of the responsibility for mechanical and electrical breakdowns for an entire decade, or the 7-year program with the total premium savings? Notice what just happened. You didn't ask them if they wanted a service agreement. You gave them 2 durations and asked them which fits best. They're choosing between 7 years and 10 years, not between yes and no. Okay, hold on a second before we get into the rest of the YouTube video. I needed to stop this to tell you about the community that we built for the top 1% of F&I managers in the country. What we're looking for is those people that are in sales and maybe they want to get in the finance office at a car dealership, or maybe that finance manager that just wants to get to the next level. They're tired of being left behind. But really what I'm looking for is I'm looking for the underdog, the one that was made the part-time finance manager, was completely discarded and got no training at all. What I want to do is I want to take these underdogs and I want them in my community so we can help coach them on how to get to the next level and beat everybody in their store. If that's you, if you're an underdog or if you're an underperformer and you're sick and tired of it and you've been ignored and you need a community around yourself, click the link below. It's time to level up. Guaranteed asset protection, responsibility transfer. Which aligns better with your situation? Would you like to cancel the entire deficiency balance for the full loan term? Or would you like a shorter term program that's going to save you about $217? The same framework, two responsibility options. One provides maximum protection and the other one provides a little bit of savings. The customer picks based upon their priorities, not based on whether they feel like buying something today. Let's talk about the full protection package. This is option one. Between these two programs, full responsibility transfer for the next decade or the 7-year program with the savings, which fits the priorities you shared earlier? That last phrase is critical. With the priorities you shared earlier, you're tying the decision back to the client survey, back to the awareness you built before the menu. The customer isn't hearing this for the first time. They're making a decision based upon the conversation that's been building since they sat down. Appearance and resale value. Which direction makes the most sense? Protecting the appearance and resale value for a full decade or covering it for the 7 years you plan on keeping it? You used their own words. The 7 years you plan on keeping it came from the survey. Now the protection is personalized to their ownership timeline. That's not selling, that's guiding. Payment-based. This program protects you for the full decade. This one saves you $417 in total premium. Which direction do you prefer? Clean, simple, 2 numbers, 1 decision, no pressure. Every single example follows the same structure. 2 responsible options, which one fits better? The language adapts, the framework never changes. Why this outperforms everything else? Let me tell you specifically why this framework dominates every other closing technique. First, it removes the pressure entirely. The customer never feels concerned. They never feel like you're trying to win. They feel like you're helping them choose. And the customers who feel helped buy more than the customers who feel pushed every single time. Second, it creates clarity in a moment that's usually confusing. The finance office is overwhelming for most customers. They've been at the dealership for hours processing numbers, terms, payments. The last thing they need is a complicated pitch. The comparison close cuts right through all of that. 2 options, 1 question, done. Third, it builds trust instead of eroding it. When you ask yes or no, the customer feels like you have an agenda. When you ask which, the customer feels like you have their interest in mind. That distinction right there is the difference between a transactional interaction and a relationship. I want this to sink in what I just said. You guys need to know that the absolute pros in this business, the top 1%, the reason why they're the top 1% is because they understand more than anything that this interaction with the customer is a relationship with the customer. And this relationship that you build, it's going to produce repeat business, referrals, and CSI scores that are going to protect your career. And fourth, it gives you consistency. When you run the same framework on every single deal, your results become predictable. You stop guessing, you stop hoping. You execute a process that you've drilled hundreds of times, and you let the framework do what it was designed to do. Predictable process, predictable income. That's the equation. How to install this permanently. Here's how you take this from something you watched on YouTube to something you run automatically on every single deal. Step 1, eliminate yes or no from your vocabulary in the finance office starting today. Every time you catch yourself about to ask, do you want or are you interested, just stop. Just stop. Rephrase it as a comparison. Which fits better? Which makes more sense? Which aligns with how you plan to own the vehicle? Drill that replacement until the old language feels foreign. Step 2, write out your comparison close for every single protection you offer. The service agreement, the tire and wheel, the appearance, windshield, key replacement. Each one gets its own this or that word track. Write them down, say them out loud, record yourself saying them. Look at yourself in the mirror while you're saying it. Listen to the recording. Refine, refine, refine. Step 3, practice the pause. After you ask the comparison question, just stop talking. Give the customer space to think. Most managers panic in silence and start filling it with more words, more justification, more selling. Don't do that. The pause communicates confidence and it communicates respect. And it gives the customer the room to make their own decision, which is exactly what makes them feel good about it afterward. Step 4, run it on every single deal for the next 30 days with 0 deviation. Do not switch back to your old way of doing things. When a deal gets uncomfortable, don't pull out for a different close because the customer seems tough. Trust the framework. 30 days of consistency in execution will show you the results that 12 techniques have never produced. One framework, mastered completely, adapted to every situation. That's what Tier 1 operators run, not a toolbox full of techniques that they're hoping to match with the right customer at the right moment. A single system they trust completely because they've drilled it until it's automatic. And here's what happens when closing becomes automatic. You stop thinking about closing entirely. Your mental energy shifts from, am I going to close this deal, to how do I serve this person? And that shift changes more than your numbers. It changes how you feel walking out of the office every single day. When the process is clean and the results are consistent, you don't carry the weight of the day home with you. You don't replay deals at dinner. You don't wake up anxious about whether this month is going to come together. The system handles that. And what's left is a space to actually be present in the rest of your life, to invest in the people and the things that matter beyond the dealership. That's what a mastered process gives you. Not just income, it gives you margin. The margin to live the rest of your life. Subscribe if you want more of how Tier 1 operators think and execute. The Assura community link is in the description below for those who are ready to install this permanently. Stop chasing, start operating.